Hello, Crafty Crandall fam. In today's video, I am going to be creating a new piece of art to put in this frame. The previous piece of art that I have here, I did for the song State of My Head by Shinedown, and while I love the song and I don't hate how this artwork came out, I just don't find that I want to display it in my house, and so today I'm going to be painting something a little bit different. I have mocked it up on my iPad here. I am going to be doing a piece for the song Masterpiece by Andy Grammer, and one of the primary lines in the chorus of that song is "Don't stop till it is beautiful," referring to the masterpiece of your life. So I am going to attempt to create this with watercolor and use it in this frame for my art studio to hang right below the gorgeous penguin print that I have from Denise Soden, so that it can go right there, and I think that it will look really pretty. So without any further ado, let's hop into it. To start with, I simply sketch out my composition. I used a flat line and a curved line to just keep everything on the same kind of plane, and then I just used a kneaded eraser to get rid of a lot of the graphite so that it was going to be minimal cleanup after taking the masking fluid off. Personally, I do this for almost every single painting, and I think that it is a really fun and easy way to create a really pretty watercolor without having to do too much of actual drawing. I love word art, and I think that it can be a really fun kind of beginner into intermediate watercolor kind of exercise just to get that creative juice flowing, but without really having to have too much of a drawing type concept, if that makes sense. I find this process super fun, even though it might look rather arduous here in the real-time footage. It is really amusing. The hard part, though, is taking the masking fluid back off. So I use the Grumbacher Miskit Frisket, I think it's called, and while I love the application of this stuff and have had really good luck with it throughout the years, I do think that there are better masking fluids out there that are a little bit easier to remove, which you will see at the end. But overall, a super fun process and really just a great way to watercolor something when you're not necessarily feeling like drawing anything to watercolor. And there it is, complete. So now I'm just going to completely let this all dry so that I can get prepared to paint over it. And what was several hours for me was only 2 seconds for you. It is now completely dry. I think for paint, I'm going to use my Winsor & Newton Cotman colors, which if you saw my recent review video, you know that I just got for Christmas. And I'm also going to add in some of my M-gram colors because these are like the most pigmented watercolors that I have. So for some of the colors, at least towards the end, when I want it to be like a really pigmented burst, those things are going to be amazing. This palette also has other watercolors in it, but I'm really only planning on using these, and then we'll see how it goes. The first thing that I do for a piece like this is mix my colors on my palette. Anytime I'm doing a large scale wet on wet wash, I always try to have enough of my colors mixed in advance so that the application process is smooth and the water that I apply to the whole sheet doesn't dry too quickly while I'm trying to mix colors. So once it's kind of like this level of wetness, it doesn't have any big stopping parts, I will go in with the colors and just start laying them down where I want them. At this point, I'm not too concerned about any mixing or anything. I'm just looking to get the base colors and the initial layer down. That said, I don't necessarily run the colors together just yet because I don't want them to get too muddy, but I do want them to at least overlap a little bit so that I don't have any white space left over. Now, that's not to say that white space is bad. Sometimes I love to have a little bit of negative space, but in this particular piece's case, I just wanted one flat wash across the whole thing containing all of the colors of the rainbow because all colors are beautiful in some respect, and so that was really what I wanted to kind of impress upon this piece, is the beauty of all of the colors. I then just went back in with a little piece of paper towel to kind of get the edges just textured and kind of remove some of the color so that the negative space is really only at the edges in this case. first layer complete here. I love like the texture that you can get with watercolor, and just removing some of the edges I think looks really cool. So now I'm gonna go back in with a second layer of color, pretty much sticking to the same color scheme, but trying to add just a little bit more dimension in each color family. In this step, we're really just bumping up the saturation of the existing colors by going back through with basically the same colors just layered on top. I personally do this because my watercolors are so transparent, and I just want the colors to kind of pop off the page a lot more, especially with a piece like this where the colors are really the only thing that the painting has going for it, right? There's no other detail, it's just an astounding amount of color. All right, layer 2 complete. I have done exactly what I said I never do, and that is use my tube watercolors and just put out a little bit. I've mixed a couple of them, and now I'm just gonna add the Graham colors to this because I think they'll add some stunning, just really pigmented bits to it. And then I wanna try to add some texture as well, so I'm gonna try some water, I'm gonna try some salt, and that sort of stuff. These Graham colors are my favorite. They are extremely pigmented and just lay down a lot more opaquely than my regular old watercolors. I use Sennelier, Winsor & Newton. I use a ton of different types of watercolor, but these are great for a piece like this where I want a punch of color just to show up on top of existing layers of color. While I do think I was a little bit heavy-handed here and should have kept the colors down into the middle a little bit more, I was super pleased with how these colors look with respect to everything else. I love these colors. It's always amazing what like patience and perseverance will do for something like this. It looks so cool. Next, I attempted to add some texture to the color by just tapping my brush with some plain, clean, clear water. And as you can see, it gives those little bloom effects. I love how these look, and I think that it just goes a long way in adding texture to a plain watercolor piece such as this. As you can see, they're starting to form, and just little speckles of texture can add a lot. I then went back through with my Finetec Pearlescent colors. These, I think, were kind of a game changer. Like, I was never anticipating to do this at the beginning, but when I saw them in my drawer when I was putting the rest of my watercolors away, I was like, wait a minute. That's what this piece is missing. They look really cool. As you can see, they're just very shimmery, and I only applied them to the word areas so that they were not as overwhelming as the rest of the colors. Then I had to remove the masking fluid. This hurts your fingers, and I have an eraser there because I tried to use an eraser at the end, and that's how I normally remove it, but otherwise it's just an arduous process. I didn't even film the rest of it because it hurt so much. Instead, you get the beautiful painting and end result from me, and you can see how shimmery and wonderful those Finetec Pearlescent colors are added on top of this piece. Personally, I just find these so much fun to do. They are simple, easy, fun way to get your watercolors out and just start painting. I highly recommend this as an exercise if you are feeling art blocked or otherwise. If you just needed some inspiration today, hopefully you can take this as that and go forth and paint something really awesome.